This is Barry Zalma, Zalma on Insurance for YouTube. I am an attorney who has retired from the practice of law and now spend my time acting as an insurance claims consultant, insurance claims expert witness, author of books and other materials and these videos for YouTube. Today we're going to talk about some insurance fraud convictions for April of 2020. Insurance fraud continually takes more money each year than it did the last from the insurance buying public. There is no certain number. Most attempts at insurance fraud unfortunately succeed. Estimates of the extent of insurance fraud in the United States range from $87 billion to more than $300 billion every year. These estimates are more like educated guesses than a true estimate. Insurers and government-backed pseudo-insurers like Medicare, Medicaid, the National Flood Insurance Program, and the crop insurance programs can only estimate the extent they lose to fraudulent claims. Lack of sufficient investigation and prosecution of insurance criminals is endemic. Most insurance fraud criminals are not detected. Those that are detected do so because they became greedy, sloppy, and unprofessional, so that the attempted fraud becomes so obvious it cannot be ignored even by the laziest police officer or prosecutor. Almost every state, by statute, requires that insurers have special investigation units to investigate potential insurance fraud and present their suspicions to state officials. It sounds good, but results in few convictions. Arrests mean nothing. Only convictions deter those who are considering insurance fraud. Zalma on Insurance will only report convictions, never just arrests. Today we're going to talk about two groups of convictions, one dealing with property insurance fraud and another dealing with medical insurance fraud. First, a mother and daughter found to be guilty of fraud. Manjit K. Singh, 48, and Harpneet K. Bath, 27, both pleaded guilty on March 23, 2020, to a single count each of conspiracy to commit wire fraud. The guilty pleas came in the wake of a March 19 indictment by a Greenup County, Kentucky grand jury. Singh's husband, 50-year-old Gurpreet Singh Bath, was also charged with conspiracy to commit arson. Authorities alleged the two tried to hire a man to burn down Wolf's Food Mart and pool hall in order to collect up to $275,000 from their insurance company. The man they hired turned out to be an informant. Not a very wise decision on who to burn down your business. Singh, according to the plea agreement, offered the informant $5,000 to burn down the store because they could no longer afford to run it. She then gave the informant a tour of the store to show him how she wanted it torched and $100 toward a $1,000 down payment for the arson. Bath traveled from Canada to deliver the other $900 in cash to the informant and to help her mother move up to Canada. The plea agreement states the wire fraud charge stemmed from the fact that the insurance claim would have been submitted by fax or telephone through interstate wires. While his initials are in the plea agreement, federal records did not show Gurpreet Bath as being charged. The two women will face up to 20 years in prison and not more than $250,000 in fine, or twice the gross gain or loss of the insurance in the claim. Federal prosecutors have argued that the pair should have a little time shaved off because the two have accepted their plea agreements in a timely fashion, but are arguing for an overall stricter sentence on the basis that the offense intended for a loss between $250,000 and $550,000 in value. They will be sentenced later this year. On the health insurance side, a CEO of a sober homes network was convicted in a $38 million fraud scheme. Sebastian Ahmed, 42, of Delray Beach, Florida, was convicted of conspiracy to commit health care fraud and wire fraud, 5 counts of health care fraud, conspiracy to commit money laundering, and 11 counts of money laundering. As part of the scheme, the conspirators exploited vulnerable drug addicts, the majority of whom were 18 to 26 years old, falsified paperwork, and entered into various kickback arrangements, all in order to receive millions of dollars of falsely and fraudulently obtained funds for their own personal use and benefit. As demonstrated by the trial record of all the conspirators, no one profited more than Sebastian Ahmed, who netted more than $2.8 million in less than 3 years. On Monday, March 23, 2020, following a 6-week jury trial, Ahmed was found guilty of 1 count of conspiracy to commit health care fraud and wire fraud, 10 counts of health care fraud, 1 count of conspiracy to commit money laundering, and 11 counts of money laundering. Sentencing is scheduled for August 6, 2020, before United States District Judge James I. Cohn in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. As to the healthcare fraud and wire fraud conspiracy and money laundering conspiracy counts, the defendant faces a statutory maximum of 20 years as to each count, and as to each of the healthcare fraud and money laundering counts, the defendant faces an additional maximum statutory sentence of 10 years imprisonment. Hopefully, he will serve most of those potential charges and potential sentences. The government proved at the trial that Sebastian Ahmed was the CEO, president, and CFO of the 2 substance abuse treatment centers, Jacob's Well and MediMD, and the medical health clinic Arnica Health, all of which he operated under the umbrella of Serenity Treatment Center, Serenity Living, and Serenity Ranch Recovery in the town of Davie, Florida. Ahmed operated the 3 clinics from around June 2016 through May 2019. He employed his brother Al, also known as Ali Ahmed, as the COO. Testimony revealed that Al Ahmed had previously declared bankruptcy, having been found liable in a civil suit by his former employer, Kaplan University, for stealing confidential lead information from Kaplan. The government proved that the defendant, 1, engaged in illegal billing to private insurance plans through Jacob's Well prior to the clinic being certified in February of 2017. 2, provided unlawful inducements to the approximately 500 patients, consisting of free airline travel, housing, vapes, manicures, cash, and failure to collect patient responsibilities for co-pays and deductibles, and 3, billed for medically unnecessary therapeutic services consisting of therapy and urine analysis, the former having not been provided but billed by defendants' substance abuse clinics. The patients were also permitted to reside in co-ed housing in which destructive sexual relationships not conducive to real addiction treatment formed, sometimes between the staff and patients, according to the evidence. The patients resided in a series of so-called sober homes maintained by defendant in Davie, Southwest Ranches, Hollywood, and Pompano. None of these homes were certified as approved community housing for persons engaged in a substance abuse treatment program. Government expert witness Dr. Kelly Clark was a board-certified addiction medicine specialist and clinical psychiatrist. She testified that the manner in which Serenity's medical providers prescribed buprenorphine and benzodiazepines to a drug-abusing population was medically inappropriate and potentially dangerous. Patient witnesses and the parent of a former patient likewise testified that Serenity caused their addictions to intensify rather than improve, and that multiple patients suffered overdoses and relapses that went unaddressed by the staff at Serenity. Indeed, the record showed that Sebastian Ahmed failed to report a single overdose incident to DCF as required by law, and that multiple patients were cycled back and forth between detox centers and Serenity without apparent improvement in their conditions. From June 2016 through May 2019, the government attributed approximately $38 million in fraudulent billing submitted by the defendants' clinics, which resulted in reimbursement over $6 million in payments. Co-conspirators and former co-defendants Ali Ahmed, the defendant's brother, and Hector Alvarez and Maureen Morel, the clinical directors at 2 of the facilities, were also charged and pled guilty in connection with the fraud. Ali Ahmed, who served as chief operating officer and co-owner of the facilities, was sentenced to 10 years imprisonment. Hector Alvarez and Maureen Morel, both of whom testified at trial against Sebastian Ahmed, each received sentences of 32 months imprisonment. These 3 former co-defendants were sentenced by United States District Judge Federico A. Moreno prior to the trial. If you found this video useful or informative and wish to learn more about insurance fraud, please subscribe to this YouTube channel and to my newsletter, Zalma's Insurance Fraud Letter, which is published twice a month, free, available from my website where you can subscribe, or just read it online, where the last 2 issues are always available in PDF format. Thank you for your interest and attention.